None So Blind by Alice Hawkins, Tavy Valley Coroner Series, Book 1. Read by Iestyn Arwel. For my mum and dad, with much love. Glossary of Welsh terms. Ceffyl pren, wooden horse. Gwyn, as in Harry Gwyn, white or fair. Betgun, the outer garment of most Cardiganshire working women in the 19th century. It featured a tight, low-cut bodice, worn over a blouse, with a long back, sometimes gathered up into a tail, worn over petticoats and an apron. Plwyfwas, literally parish servant. The English equivalent might be beadle. Clom, a building material comprising clay, straw, subsoil, and small stones, considered superior to turf but inferior to stone. Prynhawn da, boneddigion. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Gwasbach, literally little servant, a term reserved for the youngest or most junior servants. Cement, a crushed stone-based floor surface. Crachach, gentry or upper classes. Prologue. West Wales, March 1843. You know the one thing I wish about that night? I wish I'd seen my father. I just wish I'd known, without so much as a scholar's doubt, that he was there. Because all through the weeks and months afterwards, all through watching that girl die in the rain and being terrified that I'd be next if I said a word, the thought that Dada was one of them made it all right. If Dada was part of it, it had to be. Mind, that's not what I thought when I first saw them. Didn't think much, to be honest, just felt a half-terrified excitement go through me, you know, that scalding thrill that makes you scared you're going to piss yourself. Shots had slapped me awake, ear-clapping powder shots, and the smell of smoke, and noise. I was halfway towards the loft ladder before I was properly awake, heart hammering, breath catching in my throat. Fire! Scrabbling hands and knees over the hay. Get out! Get out! But then sense caught up. Fire didn't make that noise. I stopped, listened, moved back towards the window. Footsteps. That's what the noise was. Footsteps outside. I didn't have to lift the shutter. It was warped enough to see around. And there was my fire, going by on the road down below. Rag and pitch torches. The reek of them was black and tarry in the freezing air. I watched the lights bob down the road and my heart followed the clump and clack of boots and clogs on the wet road. Men marching, not just walking by, like they'd have done if it had just been one or two of them. Marching. Clump, clump, clack, clack. They weren't in perfect time. They were a bit ragged, as if they could see themselves doing it and thought, look at us, marching like soldiers. But still, marching they were. I pulled the shutter further open and stared down. Their faces were black and gold in the flames, and the smoke from their torches hung in the air after they'd walked by, as if it was trying to hide them. Dozens of men there were, maybe 100, not easy to count a mob in the dark, even with a bright moon. I pulled the shutter right up so I could see down the road to the toll gate, and that's when the piss-pressing excitement grabbed hold of me. It was happening. Here, in front of my eyes. Because there he was, on a tall horse, huge in the moonlight, sitting there, his face so black he almost disappeared clear into the night. Only the white nightgown on him showed he was there. Rebecca. My father had been wishing the lady here for months. Rebecca from Arwel, he said. That's who we need. But wishful thinking was all it had been. He hadn't really, honestly thought she'd come. Not in the flesh. Not for us. I shivered. Needed my blanket now. I wasn't going to be burned to death. All that last summer, the newspaper at chapel had been full of a new word. Unrest. The paper had gone from hand to hand between service and Sunday school until the print was just dark grey smudges. Men who could read recited the words to those who couldn't, and we'd listened, us boys. Quiet for once, pretending we weren't there, listened with our ears out on stalks. Working men were taking up weapons in England and walking away from manufacturing machines. The militia was putting down Chartism, whatever kind of violence that was, in Merthyr Tydfil, in our own country. Workers were trying to force a bit of fairness for themselves and their families. Unrest. Then, after the newspapers, it was the Bible, and we listened again. More than we'd ever listened to Scripture before. Suddenly it was speaking to us, the way the minister had always said it would. One day. Only we'd never believed him. They that be slain with the sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. That was the one we kept saying to each other. Hunger wasn't killing us yet, but we knew it was crouching nearby, teeth bared. We'd heard our fathers dreading it, and we wanted to fight. They that be slain by the sword, of course. We turned that round. In our minds, it'd be us with a sword in our hand. We'd be the ones doing the slaying, thank you very much. And it wasn't just us boys either. We watched the men looking at each other from under their eyebrows, nodding and muttering, finding words to give voice to a defiance that didn't sit easily with them. We're men, not cattle. If it's one or the other, better to die with a sword in your hand, isn't it, than with the cramps of hunger in your belly? Got to do something, haven't we? We thought it was just words. When had we ever seen our fathers lift a finger against their betters? Never. We'd do something when we were men, of course we would, but not our fathers. Not the men who touched their caps and scraped up their bits of English for the squires and their stewards. Not our fathers who paid over every inch and farthing in the house for rents and rates and tolls and got nothing but tired, bony land in return. But then Rebecca had come down from the hills, and it wasn't just words any more. And now the lady was here, not up in the Preselles, not in gossip and tales, here, right in front of me. Was my father in the crowd? The other men from our chapel? I strained the marchers with my eyes, but black faces were all I could see. Was he there? I looked and looked, but I couldn't see him. Couldn't see anybody I recognised, not for definite. Every man Jack I knew in the world might have been there, and I couldn't have put a name to one of them. I stared as hard as I could, but even moonlight and firelight added together couldn't show me what I wanted to see. My father with a sword in his hand. Truth to tell, I couldn't see many real weapons. Everyday tools the men had. Axes, hammers, saws, billhooks, heavy sharp tools for hacking and smashing. I shivered. My teeth were chattering from excitement and cold. Heads and shoulders were still going by beneath me. They were as noisy as you like, didn't care who heard them, shouting, laughing, even singing a bit of a hymn. And all of it had a shrill edge to it. It wasn't everyday laughing and singing and shouting. It was like that moment in an argument when words suddenly turn weak on you and your fists finish things. Some of the men had nightgowns on, like Rebecca, but most just had an apron or a shawl. There was the odd tall Sunday hat, but not many. I didn't bother looking under the hats for Dada. My mother had never lent him her best hat to go gate-breaking. I knew that for a certainty. She'd be afraid of never getting it back. I raked my eyes through the crowd, pushing up to the toll gate. Was he here? We were half an hour's walk from home, and that was nothing to Dada. He'd walk that far to give you an egg. He was desperate enough to risk the militia and come here, I knew that. He told me straight, we didn't have the money for lime tolls in the spring, and if we couldn't spread lime, our land wouldn't yield. Caught in the old farmer's trap, weren't we? Penniless now if we did pay out, penniless later if we didn't. That was why Dada had hired me out. If Uncle Price fed and clothed me for a year, Dada could put lime on our ground. If I stayed home, he couldn't. I wiped a nose drip with the side of my finger and pulled the blanket up around me. Was Uncle Price watching from the inn next door? Or was he snoring after the skinful he'd had with the farmer he'd come to buy a bull from? I didn't care. He'd brought me with him and I was going to see Rebecca. The air bit at my nose and cheeks. Stragglers hurried not to be last at the toll gate. Boot-nail sparks came off the road in the dark with a haste to them. A sudden bang.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?